Okay, guys, welcome to the, I don't know how many this is, probably the 8th Career and Professional Development Seminar that we've had at the center. So my name is Liz Ward, and I work for the Aeronautics Research Directorate, and I also am representing the AIAA Hampton Roads section, where I'm the committee chair of the Career and Professional Development Committee. So we are offering these seminars primarily for young people that are interested in having a career in aeronautics. And our speaker today is Paul Krasa. He's a senior project lead for NASA headquarters. He's got tons of experience. He's also a veteran of the U.S. military. And he's also a private pilot with a instrument rating on a couple different aircraft. So I'm not going to tell you more about his career, but I am going to encourage you guys that next week we're going to have a summer social for all the students at the center, and the food is free, and it's like a taco bar. I think it's Tuesday. Does anybody know for sure what day it is? Are there any other AIAA people in here? I don't see any, but I think it's Tuesday, and I will try to send an email out to remind everybody. It's going to be from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 in this building, and it's going to be next to Afterburner, so that if you're 21 or older, you can buy your own alcohol. The alcohol won't be free, but the food will be free, and I encourage you to come. And you can also join AIAA, and if you haven't thought about joining AIAA at your college, I encourage you to do it, and you can join here and then transfer the membership to your college. It's like $25 to join for the year, and then you have that on your resume that you're a member of AIAA. And they have conferences at your school, they have regional conferences, they have national conferences where you can get some experience as a professional speaker while you're a student. So I encourage you all to do that. And I also encourage you to come back on Friday, where we're going to have an F-22 pilot talking about his career being an F-22 pilot. That's, I think, unique. In the time that I've been here, I've never heard an F-22 pilot give a talk. And he's probably just as young as some of you. Maybe not solely because you're 17, but he's in his early 20s. He's already a captain in the U.S. Air Force. He's a wonderful person. I encourage you to come back and listen to him. That's Friday at 2 o'clock in this auditorium. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Paul Krasa.
Thanks, Liz. Can everybody hear me? All right, so my name is Paul Krasa. Liz, thank you for the very wonderful introduction. You'll find I'm probably one of these people that's more of a roamer when I talk. So who is this guy? You've all read this. I put this in there on purpose. That's my bio, but it doesn't tell you anything, right? Read somebody's bio. It's like a little bit of a resume. But my path to NASA started when I was 14 years old, and I didn't even know it. I was 14. My parents, we lived up in a small farming community in southwestern New York State. And we all did the proverbial trip to Disney. I'm sure many of you have done it. I can't tell you a thing about that trip to Disney, except for one thing. On the way down and the way back, my nose was plastered to the side of the airplane's window. It was the first time I ever flew in an airplane. It was the first time I'd ever seen the wonder of the sky. That doesn't sound like a big deal. Probably many of you have been there. But that started my passion for aviation. It also was the thing that just a year or two later that caused me to join the Air Force. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life at that time, like many of you at 17, 18 might be dealing with. But I knew one thing. I knew I wanted to do something to do with airplanes. That was all it was. I wanted to do something to do with airplanes. While I was in the military, it says here, senior leaders encouraged me to go to college. Well, that's not quite true. I was ordered to go to college. One day I stepped in to my performance review, which many of you will do it. I had a great performance review. It was outstanding down the line. Had a good buddy, was my supervisor, but the major was sitting in there. And the major never would have been in an enlisted guy's performance review. And so the back of my mind, I'm thinking this whole time, why is he here? The major's only ever here. I was also a supervisor. The major's only ever here because he's going to drop the hammer. Something's going to happen, and it's normally bad. So I'm sitting there in the back of my mind, I get this perfect annual review. Great endorsements. Endorsements are very important in the military, and for my rank, I had a full bird colonel's endorsement. That was a big deal. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what the heck's going on? So at the end of the normal thing, and the major's just sitting there with his arms crossed, being very quiet. We go through my next year's performance. And it's the exact same thing. And we're getting to the throwaway page for most of the military. It's called education. It's what's going to happen next year. What's your training? And it's always standard. It's a standard thing, and everybody for a certain rank gets the same one. And I get to this final page, and the major finally says something, and he tells my supervisor, he excuses him. And he says, hey, Sergeant Krasa. I said, yes, sir. He said, I've went and read your jacket. Okay, now I'm really in trouble. That's your personnel file. And you have been encouraged by many, many, many officers and many, many senior enlisted people to go to college. You are so smart, and I've never been told I was smart before, that you need a little bit more encouragement. Yes, sir. You will, and this is an order, and the military owns you by, if you all don't know that, they own you 24/7, they own your life. You will go to the education office and you will take 2 college courses per semester, and you will maintain a B average. Oh, fill in the blank. Not something I was interested in at the time. Because the other part of that story, and this is why I say this to y'all, it's not something I'm proud of. I graduated in high school probably second or third from the bottom of my class. My average probably for high school was a D, if I'm lucky. The reason I say that to y'all, because you can do whatever you want to do. If you try hard enough, you can do anything. If you try hard enough and you're willing to sacrifice, you can get there from here. You all are starting from a better place than I did. It took me over 1.5 years to make up in college courses for what I missed in high school. But once I actually went to college and started working on it, I found that it wasn't all that hard. As long as I put in the time and did the work. And then I finally got into engineering, which then it was hard, so. That's more of the what type of thing. So let's talk about values. What makes NASA different? Is it our aeronautics program? Is it our space program? Is it our science mission program? You ask Mom and Dad America, they're going to tell you that what is NASA. What they're not going to tell you is what really makes us different. And it's all these people. These are some of the best teams that I've ran. And all these teams had one thing in common. When I came out of the military, I didn't believe. First I was at Kennedy, and then I first came here. When I was in the military, I had a unit that had an unbelievable esprit de corps. Spirit of the group. And it wasn't until around 2000, and I've been in the agency for about 10 years, that I got involved in a project. And I was shown by one of our leaders, one of my mentors, that you could actually build a team at NASA that had esprit de corps. And it was a wake-up call for me. It was something I hadn't believed we could do. But I also understood that the way it was done from watching him was done differently in NASA. You definitely in NASA have to lead people from their hearts, not from their heads. So one of the things I learned from watching him was how to build those teams. But I'm a different leader than he is. And he's a great leader, but everyone has to find their style. And by the way, the guy that taught me how to do it is Dave Bowles. He's one of my mentors. He's a great guy. If you ever get to know him, he's really personable. But every one of these teams then were the teams that I started thinking about, how do you do this? What are the things that make all these teams that had in common was they all wanted to be together as a group. They all wanted to accomplish things together. And we did incredible things. You've seen it in the bio, things that have never been done before. The team in the middle, High Therm. That team, I can't say I did it. That wasn't my job. I was the guy that sort of made sure the bills got paid, crafted the team and stuff like that, put them together. Took a bunch of researchers here from Langley, trained them in mission operations, and then went down to the mission control. And we imaged the orbiter for the first time in IR spectrum. We didn't only do that, we made movies of it. The shuttle program was so impressed with what this team did. Originally, we were only supposed to do 2, STS-119 and 125. They were so impressed, they gave us the money to do all the rest of them. And it wasn't because a lot of what we were able to do, most of us didn't know what we were doing to begin with. I had one guy that's sitting there in the picture. We didn't have somebody that understood IR and how to do IR cameras. Took a guy who was a researcher. He told me, give me 3 weeks. Didn't know anything about infrared at the time. Came back and he was an expert in infrared. Don't ever, ever take what's on somebody's resume for anything more than that's all it is, a piece of paper. You always want to look at the quality of the people, not what their past was. All those teams. The team over with the C-17 is Viper. You've seen the announcement on that. We put volcanic ash through the engine, operating at flight power. I had directors at this agency across multiple centers tell me, 1, we're crazy, 2, we were stupid, and then the third thing was, you got to be kidding me. And the reason for that was, think about it, for all you mechanicals and aeros out there, everyone in here's had physics. You can store infinite energy in rotational mass, right? What happens if a high pressure turbine lets go? It's a bad day. High pressure turbine let go off of LA. It's parked at LA, they were doing a maintenance test on it. The turbine came out of the back of a 757, went 3 miles. That was the risk that we were facing. How do you do those kind of things? The bottom picture is high-techs. Can't get into that one a lot. It was a re-entry vehicle that went exo-atmospheric and came back down through the atmosphere. Does anybody see the mascot in the picture? See if you can find the mascot for that.
Which picture?
The one in the lower corner.
Butterfly?
No, not the butterfly, but you're close.
Oh, the llama?
The llama. We became known as the Llama Project because almost all of our team projects, we couldn't have a lot of pictures like this, so we always met at this one guy's farm, and we always had a llama in all our pictures. Seriously. So everybody referred to us. No one knew we were named High-Techs. It was the Llama Project. Great team. NASA values. So we started talking about this. And there are some people in this room that have been on some of my former teams that have heard this. Family comes first. That is one of our core and key values. What happens when you put a team together that's so highly, highly motivated? They want to be together. They want to accomplish whatever it is. A lot of people at this agency, by their nature, are unbelievable workaholics. You get a highly, highly, highly motivated team, it creates its own issues. People will drive themselves to drop. I've actually had it happen. Your team will drive themselves till they get sick. Been there. Part of the issue then is how do you deal with that? Took me a while to get this one, like some of the other things. You think about it at first levels. Family comes first, and this includes you. You're part of your family. You know? You've got to, and there's a lot of times when I've told people, you know, you got to make sure you're taking care of your family. You want to really get me upset? Violate that one. Probably the only time, and I've got the military background, I've chewed somebody up one side and down the other and back and forth because I found out that they violated that. Now it sounds, oh, this is all this great stuff. Goes with the next one. Everyone goes home at the end of the day. Day being figurative. Everybody gets to go home. Why is that important? What does it really mean? There's more to depth to this than what you think. As a leader, how do you do it strategically? How do you go in front of it so that you can say, I know when we go do these risky things, I know when we do these hard things that potentially have bad things that could happen. So there's a safety embedded in this. You got to think about it. My worst day of my whole NASA career was when somebody got hurt. When we did it all right, and we still had an employee get hurt. Those kind of things are the things that keep me up at night. You know, the thing with this is at the end of the day, when we're done with the test, if you can't go home to your family, that's a problem. The other thing with the other thing is, a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, family comes first, tale of two different organizations. When he worked for one of the major aerospace companies, he knew of a manager whose wife had cancer. And this gentleman was so afraid to go spend time with his wife that he would sneak away for only an hour or two. Do you think his mind was on the job? We had a very, very similar thing happen down at Johnson Space Center when I was running a project that included them. And absolutely what we said, we told them, this person, please go take care of your wife. We've got this. That's part of being part of the team. It's part of being part of the NASA family, and family comes first. And he went off and he took care of his wife, and he was there for her. And that was more important to us than the mission that we were trying to accomplish. And that's what makes NASA different. Leadership. This is probably one of my favorite ones. Everybody that's ever worked for me has heard it at least once. I see some smiles in the back from some of the people who worked for me on teams. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. When I first became a leader with the military background, it was lead, follow, and the leader never gets out of the way. Never, right? It took me a long time to figure this one out. But choose. You gotta make a choice, believe it or not. First thing I learned about this is choose. Which one are you gonna do? All choices may be right given circumstances. Any one of those. I'll tell you, and you guys are probably getting, guys and gals are probably getting a sense of my personality. I got a pretty strong personality. I'm the extrovert in the group of introverts. So, way back when high therm was in phases, we had not gotten our funding for phase 3. We were shutting down. We weren't going to get to do the imaging. It was 2 days, maybe 3 days before the end of the fiscal year. Myself, Tom Horvath, who was the principal investigator, got a phone call. Hey, it's shuttle program. We want you to go do this. Can you still make it? It was less than 6 months. We needed at least 9 to get the job done. And it was the end of September. Coming up on holiday time. Tom and I debated it, and we said, no, we cannot commit the team to doing this. We need to bring the team in, see if they still want to do it, because everybody's got to choose to do it. Because we already realized that if we were going to actually get this done, everybody had to give up all their holidays, all their weekends, that family time to make it happen. So Tom and I laid out an hour to get this done. And we walked into this meeting to convince the team about how we were going to get the opportunity, but how we were going to have to ask them to make all this sacrifice. The hour meeting lasted less than 15 minutes. And the guy one of the guys, actually 2 of the guys, that threw me out of my own meeting are sitting here today. And once they figured out we were going to get to go do this, not so politely, they asked me to get out of my own meeting. Get out of the way. I can tell you, if I hadn't left the meeting, they would have thrown me out physically. I'm serious, they would have. So sometimes the right move for your team is to get out of the way. Well, they got it. They got the bit between their teeth. They want to move. If you stand in front of them, you're going to get ran over, probably physically. Sometimes it's the right thing to do is follow, watch. Sometimes when you take over a project, especially when you're being brought in that's not in good shape, you need to follow it. You need to watch it. Figure out what the dynamic is. A leader always understands the dynamic of their team. What's the dynamic? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they pissed? Are they frustrated? Holistically. You might have 1 or 2 people, but you got to look at the whole team. What's the dynamic? A lot of times that's not what's being said. You got to watch them from afar, sort of like a science project, right? Something knows it's being watched, it changes its behavior. Now some of the guys are in here like, oh, that's what he's doing when he's not doing anything. Because sometimes what you have to do, and you have to realize that if you're working in the project, doing stuff in the project, you can't work on the project. It's very, very hard if you're not seeing the big picture. And if you're in doing a finite task, you cannot actually be watching your whole group and how they're interacting. So make a choice. So the next thing that goes into it, every good leader always needs to be answering these questions. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. Just like Kennedy did for us. Sometimes they come into a goal statement that has multiple pieces. A where and a when, right? I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. Funny thing about these questions is they're insidious. If I ask myself, or if someone asks, where am I going to find the employees to do this project? Is that a where question? Not really. It's a who question. You better state who is going to do the work, not where. Right? So you got to think about it. Sometimes the how question is resources. How am I going to get this done? How is it going to get paid for? But sometimes how questions can change too. How am I going to change the dynamic of this team? Again, is that a how or a who question? You got to think about it. This is a game for active thinkers. You got to always be thinking. One of the things you have to think about, where am I in time? Where's my team in time? If you are mentally not out in front of your team, you cannot lead them. Even if you're looking at all the questions before, the one thing you always have to do is be mentally in front of your team. And you need to know where you are in time. Am I thinking 90 days in front of myself? Am I thinking 120 days? A year? Or am I 2 weeks behind? I just came back from vacation. Oh, I'm still not up on the curve yet. You got to go awful fast and awful hard to get in front of it. The one thing I think about is a wave analogy. If you've ever done any surfing, you got to paddle up the backside of the wave, and it takes a heck of a lot of work to be able to surf the front side. But that's sort of like leadership. It takes a lot of work on the backside. You got to paddle it up, paddle it up, paddle it up. And then once your team's moving and the dynamic's right, they will carry you. They will carry the wave. If your team's highly motivated, you're going to have some different problems. Leadership. Solve the problem, don't make the problem. What's the difference? Can you do both? Can you create the problems? And sometimes you have to create the problem. I remember when I first came in the agency, we had branch chiefs that we called it, they had the art of the grenade thrower. They'd walk into a meeting, disrupt the meeting by throwing a grenade, a figurative grenade, and then turn around and walk out. Because there was this thought that stirring the pot and creating the chaos in itself would solve the problem. Not really. It usually just created more chaos and more problems. So we've talked about esprit de corps and highly motivated teams. Every one of those teams I showed you had definitely one trait. They were all emotionally committed. And now I will tell you the secret. I crafted it. And I'm probably going to get smacked by a couple people in here. I crafted an emotional commitment by understanding the dynamic of the team. It's not for the faint of heart. You're asking people to commit their emotions to doing something. Not just professionally, but they got to want it personally for whatever reason. Does that have negative outcomes? Does that create its own problems? Not for everybody to do, I will tell you that. Because you better be ready to deal with the emotional outcomes. I have had teams where I've had, in those pictures, there are two people that came this close to an actual fist fight. Non-professional, right? It is. But I've had yelling matches, screaming matches. If you're going to ask people to emotionally commit themselves to do something, you better be really ready to deal with the whole package. You can't ask people to emotionally commit themselves to doing one thing and then ask them to put all that emotion aside. They do, they try, but eventually it's going to come out. And you got to stay far enough ahead of it, you got to stay far enough ahead of the dynamic so that it doesn't become a problem. And then, as the leader, you also need to be willing to protect them. Because it's your responsibility. You did it. And if you're not willing to take that responsibility, then you shouldn't step up to the plate and grab the bat. So yes, solve the problem, don't make the problem. But what happens when in creating the solution, creating the force multiplier, it has consequences. So it's sometimes harder to know than when you think. You got to think about it. Am I causing this problem? Did I do this? Now how do I fix it? Stuff happens. We all have bad days. Stuff happens. You're going to find, and I could go through a lot of different stories, first mission of high therm, second mission of high therm, the solar tower test we did, all that stuff is going to happen. You're going to get a tactical situation where things are going to be not going well. How do you fix it? I just went through wilderness first aid training here a while ago. And one of the things we talk about when we're coming into a situation, it's life-threatening. People are bleeding, broken bones. The first thing they talk about is take a moment to calm yourself, to find your Zen moment. One of the things I think about when days are going wrong, and I've stolen this straight out of the Scout Handbook. Some people here know that I'm also a Scout Master for one of our local troops. Stop. Stay calm. Think, observe, and plan. This is really a good thing to think about when things are going wrong. Not just what we teach Scouts when they're lost hiking. When you are in a situation when emotions are running high, panic, fatigue, adrenaline, those things are going to cause you to make very fast, very instinctive decisions. That's the time when you have to stop. And you need to think about it, because every one of you here, I promise you, is on the road to being a leader. Every one of you is going to be a leader. You're here because you've already proven yourself. I can't tell you what you'll be leading, but I can tell you will be. So when those days are going wrong, you got to think about, how am I going to handle it before you get there? Before you are actually in that point, have a plan. Another thing Scouts say, right? Fail to plan, plan to fail. There's a lot of truth to that. So the thing about it I'm trying to leave you with here is that it's active thinking. So the last thing I'm going to say here, and I started this off with talking about myself in high school and not doing very well. I would have never, ever, ever in my life when I was 17, 18, 19, if you had told me where I would be today, I would have told you were nuts. I probably would have been a lot more emphatic about it, because it was not in the scope of even the realm of my reality. So to think about where you guys are already starting from today, I can tell you that my story is the American dream. I'm the first engineer in my family. I'm the first one ever to work for NASA in my family. I came from a small town where everybody that graduated from me went to work on Daddy's farm or went to work in the factories. So if I can get where I am today, and I am one of the national project managers in this agency, and I'm now working at the program levels, any of you can do more and go farther than I have even thought about it. And I challenge you that when you get another 10, 20 years down the road, to be able to say, I'm living a life beyond my childhood dreams. Because this and the people I'm looking at here are the generation that is going to take this nation and the world to Mars. And that's important. Thank you. So if any of you would like to ask some questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I've got about 10 minutes before I got to go to a meeting. Anybody?
All right, I'm going to start.
Okay. Want to take the mic since it's streaming?
Okay.
Sorry.
If you ask a question, try to use the mic just because we're recording this and it's being streamed. So my question, Paul, is how do you go about selecting the people that are going to be on your project and be part of your team?
It depends. Sometimes it's, if you're taking over a project, you already have the group that you're going to be working with. Other times, if you're lucky enough, you get to select the people. But when I look for people, it's not because of where they work. It's because of who they are. It's the qualities they bring to the table. And as some people in this room already know, if you let me know you're an Eagle Scout, I'm probably going to push you pretty hard. And that doesn't only go for some of the students that are in this room, but I've got a couple people in the back that are NASA employees that are Eagles. And they know who I'm talking about. And probably the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what's the oath and the law? And almost every Eagle, by the way, even when he's 50, you got to think about it for a second. He'll know what the oath and the law is. So, I mean, that's what I look for. I look for the qualities of the people, not for what or where they work. We're all very, very intelligent. Oh, one thing I forgot to say to everybody. There is one other common trait about NASA you're going to find throughout everybody. We're not here because of a paycheck. Every one of us that's in NASA could probably easily double our paycheck by going out to the industry. We're all here because we love this agency. We love this big family that we call NASA. Next question. Come on. None of you guys have any questions? I'll put people on there.
Peter, hold on a minute.
Hold on, Pete. Actually, if you don't ask questions, I'm gonna make one of the guys that used to work for me come down here and talk about it, and he knows who I'm talking about. He's like, no, you're not. I'll kill you. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
Let's say on a team that's like well into the project, you have two people who just can't get along and they're just at odds with each other. Like, how do you deal with that? Do you just like assign them to different parts of the project, or how do you get them to work together?
I will tell you something that's interesting. Two things. One, when you have the highly emotional, highly committed team that has esprit de corps, they take care of it. Believe it or not, the team will take care of it. That person will either figure out how to be part of the team, or very, very rarely has it ever gotten to my level. Most people, once they're that highly committed, if they are part of that team, but they see that they're not contributing, or one individual that I had that he couldn't deal with that high level of emotional commitment. And he self-selected himself out. One of the things I believe is that, and I start from this premise, everybody's heart is in the right place. I believe that everybody that we have working for us at NASA, their hearts are in the right place. So I start with that when it comes to them as a person. We all make bad decisions. We all are irrational. We all do things that are stupid. But I always go back to, is that person making decisions because of what they believe? Not what I believe, but what they believe. And if their decisions are within that realm of their heart's in the right place, I absolutely give them the benefit of the doubt. And when days are going bad, that's especially when it becomes important, because then you no longer shoot the messenger. It's something besides the people. When something fails, something besides the people. And 90% of the time, I've always found it's a process problem. Something that we missed, something we didn't do. Now, in that two instances in my career, one specific one that I can think of, where we had a team member who was given every benefit of the doubt, and I finally determined their heart was not in the right place. I had to go to the institutional system to get them replaced. But in 30 years, I've only had to do it once. And when I'm doing that, it's not because I want to. It's because it's something that's your last resort, not your first resort. Most of the time, especially when you get these high functioning teams, people don't get to that point. They'll either self-select out or they won't make it, they won't join the team to begin with. When you're emotionally committed to your team, it's hard. You will expect more of yourself because you don't want to let your team members down. And that's, I think, what really helps. That these people all don't want to let them down. Think about it. It's not a job anymore. Great question, Peter. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I thank you all very, very much for coming. I hope you learned something. I hope it made you think. Because that's sort of the whole thing about it, is thinking. All right. If there's some questions you have that you didn't get to ask, I'm in the email. You can send me an email. My contact card's there also if you want to call me. I do not take phone calls. I do not respond to messages on my office phone. I think my cell phone's on there. Enjoy your summer and look forward to seeing you all in the future, because I do actually believe that you guys are going to take us to Mars. So, see y'all.